to the Thought Snob Podcast. I'm Paula Swope. Let's get snobby. At 47, I've never seen our nation more stressed about a presidential election. People are scared. That's why I'm dedicating this podcast episode to help alleviate some of this election anxiety. But I'm not going to tell you to think positively and do breath work and meditate and eat right and exercise and take care of yourself, okay? That's not what this is about. Yeah, you need to do all of those things all the time. But what I have to say may surprise you. I instinctively feel like it will benefit a lot of people. My goal for this talk is to show you how to live from a place of power. Allowing an elected official to cause you to live in fear removes your power and makes you very vulnerable to external influences. No one is better than you. No one can control you or make you upset unless you allow it. By the end of this talk, I want you to see this situation for what it is. And I'll give you a new perspective on politics that empowers you. Have you ever heard that quote by Elbert Hubbard? He's credited with saying, "Don't take life too seriously. You'll never get out of it alive." That's the one thing all of us have in common. None of us are getting out of here alive. When we leave our bodies, we're not taking our assets with us either. I want you to see your elected officials through this lens. This is a fact. And my whole thought snob concept is based on looking at your life objectively versus subjectively. The media encourages the subjective, and they are brilliant manipulators who want you to make fearful meanings out of everything. I'm taking away the media's power, and I'm giving it to you. When you stop making meaning out of things and look at the facts, you're behaving like a person who has emotional intelligence and mindful awareness. When those two qualities are active in your life, you live in faith rather than fear. Approaching this issue from a nonpartisan perspective is crucial. I don't care which side of the fence you're on. I plan to keep this talk as free from bias as possible because I respect both sides. I always have. My approach to helping you manage election anxiety is to bring awareness to some facts you may not have considered before. I also want to make it abundantly clear that everything I say is from my perspective. I'm a white, heterosexual female born and raised in rural Kentucky. So some of what I say today will resonate and some of it won't. But all of it is based on facts, not opinions. What I'm passing on to you right now applies to all aspects of your life, not just politics, okay? Now, I want to emphasize this talk is based on facts. I didn't dream up that election anxiety is unprecedented. Recent studies show that election anxiety has infiltrated many American households. For example, the American Psychological Association's annual Stress in America survey found that politics was the leading cause of stress for 7 out of 10 adults across party lines as of August. Here we are on Election Day, and I think it's safe to assume that stress levels have risen. Emotions are running high. I've witnessed that myself. I know several people who have cut ties with friends and family because their political ideologies are opposite. Do what you gotta do, I guess. But we should never get emotionally attached to a politician. And I'll speak on that in just a moment. Right now, here is where I really want to dig into this topic of alleviating election anxiety. I want to present some facts to you. I want you to see that politics has little control over your financial situation. I want to address this because people are worried about our economy. Despite what you've heard on the news or from other people, you have more control over your financial situation than you realize. I keep hearing this question. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Personally, no. When Donald Trump took office in 2016, my husband and I struggled financially. We were working our asses off, but couldn't get ahead. That was the case with us throughout the entire Trump administration. But here's the deal. Trump had nothing to do with that. Politics had nothing to do with that. It was life circumstances. We were paying high child support payments because my stepkids were both under 18 back then. My mother had a catastrophic health event that put us in a terrible financial predicament. My husband lost his job. I was building my consultant business. Those 4 things were life circumstances, life changes that no presidential administration could have an impact on. I'm talking zero impact. It wouldn't have mattered who was in office. Let's flash back for just a moment to the economic recession that lasted from late 2007 through mid-2009. I wasn't affected by the recession at all. George W. Bush was president at the beginning of that, and then Obama stepped in January 2009. My life didn't change. I didn't have a lot of money during that time, but I was okay. I didn't experience any devastating life changes. I was working on my graduate degree. I had a job at the university and had financial support from my father. I was fine during the recession. As a matter of fact, I don't even remember thinking about the recession. So there I was, totally okay, while others lost everything. Life circumstances vary from person to person, and politics cannot take all of the responsibility for that. Now, some people will crucify me for saying this, but the president doesn't have control of the economy like you may think. I won't bore you with a discussion about that, but I strongly encourage you to research it and take a look at the Federal Reserve. Look at the facts. Here's another example. In 2020, the pandemic hit. A lot of people suffered financially. Me, on the other hand, I made more money than I ever had in my life. Right now, inflation is high, no doubt about that. But my husband and I are in great financial shape. Politics has nothing to do with that. It's life circumstances. Politics has never helped or hindered my finances. Not one time. Well, I take that back. Maybe once. Long story short, and I'm only going to tell it in case it happened to others, I accepted that bullshit PPP loan in 2020, and I didn't want to accept that loan, but my bank, which was Fifth Third at the time, led me to think that I'd be crazy not to take that free money. I was a small business owner, so I viewed the PPP loan as I would an entitlement based on what I was told. I had to pay that shit back. They wouldn't grant me loan forgiveness because my bank claimed I never qualified for the PPP loan in the first place. But my husband was granted loan forgiveness. He didn't even fill out the paperwork. The bank did it all for him, and they wouldn't help me do shit. That is a true story. Anyway, I'll refrain from a tangent about Fifth Third Bank, but that was bullshit. However, it was another lesson learned for me. I went against my intuition on that and accepted that money when I didn't feel right about it, and it placed me in an unbelievably stressful situation. Anytime I've ignored my intuition, I've lived to regret it. My intuition is never wrong. I use it to empower or disempower myself. It's always my choice. Okay, let's get back to politics and the economy. Flashback to 1982. In 1982, the economic expansion began. I was 6 years old, and I still remember the worrying that built the foundation of the house I lived in. My parents were strapped for money, oh my God, and both of them products of poverty socialization. My father worked to the point that it wasn't healthy, and my mother was in and out of factories because they would either lay her off or the factories would shut down. We were not in a financially stable situation during the 1980s at all. Keep in mind, this was part of the greatest economic boom in history. Ronald Reagan was president, so that was a Republican administration. After Reagan, Daddy Bush stepped in, so we had another Republican administration. It wasn't until the early 90s that my family got some relief from the financial struggles, but that relief wasn't because of politics. It was because my father had the determination of 50 people, and he refused to live in poverty like he had during childhood. My mother pulled her weight as much as possible, but women didn't make as much money as men back then. I mean, not even close. Did politics drive that? Yes and no. Equal pay for equal work has always been a problem. But look at how many wealthy women there are. Those women are wealthy because they decided to be wealthy, and they stomped on that Equal Pay Act with their freaking red bottoms. They made empowering choices. My mother didn't make empowering choices. She disempowered herself. She lived in fear. She left her fate and finances in the hands of a corporate entity that didn't give two shits about her. If she would have believed in herself, she would have made powerful choices that would have granted her financial freedom. Facts. After George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton stepped in, which took America into a Democratic administration. Clinton was in office from 1993 to 2001. During this time, my father became a millionaire, not because of Clinton, but because of hard work, determination, and some savvy business decisions. And I must tell you that my father is a very loyal, diehard Republican. I'm telling you this so you'll see that personal situations and free will impact your life more than politics. Take control of your situation and do not rely on any elected official to have your back. That's what God and the universe are for. And those are two sources you can trust. Always. Consider this. I want you to ask yourself this question. Is it possible for things to turn out in your favor if your candidate loses? Yes, it is. Think about my father becoming a millionaire during the Clinton administration. He freaking hated Bill Clinton. But even though a president he despised was in the White House, things turned out in his favor. I'm using this as an example only to get you to see how much power you have despite the person in office. Here's another question for you. Is it possible for the candidate you don't like to do something that will benefit you? Yes, it is. Now let's take these questions one step further. Think about your all-time favorite elected official. Now think about what your life was like when that person was in office. Did bad things happen? Did good things happen? How much of the bad and the good can be attributed to your favorite elected official's work? I'll leave you to think about those experiences. We must always prepare for the worst case scenario so that no one has power over us. A looming fear right now is the abolishment of Social Security benefits. Many Americans have relied on their earned entitlements to retire, and they should be able to rely on them. However, let's say, hypothetically speaking only here, let's say that Social Security does go away. Is it possible for your retirement to come from another source? Yeah, it is. Because you have the power to create the life you want. I'm telling you, when you decide what type of lifestyle you want, and you start thinking about that lifestyle and start talking about that lifestyle will find you. As long as you believe you can have that lifestyle, you'll have it. My mentor, God rest his soul, Dr. Wayne Dyer said, when you believe it, you'll see it. There's no better time than right now to start creating a better scenario for yourself. If you don't know how to do that, visit my website, paulaswope.com. buy my book, Thought Snob, The Modern Spiritual Playbook for a Better Life. Listen to my podcast. Use my free guided visualizations. And all those are designed to help you consciously create what you want. Okay, back to the topic at hand. When someone tells you over and over again that you can't have what you want, you believe it. And those beliefs, unless they are interrupted, have the power to destroy your life. This book takes you on a journey of self-assessment, self-reflection, and self-empowerment, but it's not a quick fix. It's a playbook to a better life. And if you emulate my spiritual teachings, your life won't look the same 1 year from now. I want you to know that if you want something, you're meant to have it. That burning desire that you've always had is there for a reason. Your intuition tells you that you are supposed to do whatever you want to do, and that's why the burning desire never goes away. You may have shut it out a time or two in your lifetime, but it always comes back. Together, we're going to bring that burning desire to life. You can attract whatever you want, regardless of your past and present circumstances. When we're done with your spiritual transformation, those who have treated you badly will wish they hadn't. Miracles aren't reserved for the saints. We sinners are just as entitled to miracles, so let's go get yours. Die-hard Democrats and die-hard Republicans are going at each other right now over the economy. I have, with my 2 eyes and ears, seen and heard heated arguments about the economy. Those arguments are incredibly biased, and many of them are uninformed. Please look at the research, not what the media reports. The research. What I'm about to tell you is based on the research, not my opinion. Historically, the American economy has been better under the Democrats. This isn't my opinion. Please Google, has the economy done better under Democrats or Republicans? You'll find overwhelming data to back up what I just told you. I'll name findings from one source and then leave the rest to you. According to the Joint Economic Committee, a new report shows that in every measure of the economy, economic performance is stronger under Democrats than Republicans. Of the 11 recessions in the modern era, 10 have begun under Republican presidents. Donald Trump claims he had the best economy ever. That's not true. It's just not. Look it up. Not my opinion. Look it up. The average voter places economic growth at the top of their voting agenda, and right now, Trump supporters are adamant that he's the best person for the economy. Maybe he is, but there's no proof of that, and anything can happen. Don't shoot the messenger here. I'm reporting facts. And I'm reporting these facts because if you're a Republican and you're worried about a Democratic administration, consider the data as well as the power of your free will. Your free will is more powerful than any elected official's power, period. All right, I'm going to switch gears and move on to morals. Frankly, morals and politics shouldn't be used in the same sentence. And I want to share something very personal here. I absolutely adored Bill Clinton. I did. When the Monica Lewinsky scandal went full throttle, I didn't really care. They were two human beings, first and foremost, human beings. He shouldn't have whored around in the White House. Absolutely not. But elected officials are human beings. When the information came out about Clinton's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, it made me sick to my stomach. And I couldn't even look at Bill Clinton, still can't. Being a whore is one thing, but being involved in sex trafficking, that's another. There's no room for anyone who is involved with Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring to have any power over the American people. No. That said, I'm going to read to you word for word what it says about Bill Clinton on whitehouse.gov. Here we go. During the administration of William Jefferson Clinton, the U.S. enjoyed more peace and economic well-being than at any time in its history. He was the first Democratic president since Franklin D. Roosevelt to win a second term. He could point to the lowest unemployment rate in modern times, the lowest inflation in 30 years, the highest home ownership in the country's history, dropping crime rates in many places, and reduced welfare rolls. He proposed the first balanced budget in decades and achieved a budget surplus. As part of a plan to celebrate the millennium in 2000, Clinton called for a great national initiative to end racial discrimination. Okay. There's no doubt that Bill Clinton was excellent at his job. So do we judge presidents based on performance or morality? I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to that question, really. We must choose what's important to us, how human beings in the White House behave and how their politics impact us. Democrat or Republican, they are human beings. Just because I think Bill Clinton's association with Epstein was disgusting doesn't mean everyone shares my opinion. But let's say everyone agrees with me about that. Does it change the fact that under his administration, America enjoyed more peace and economic well-being than ever in history? It doesn't. This is what all of us must accept. Don't get so emotionally wrapped up in politicians that you're defending them to your family and friends because you don't know who you're defending. Ask yourself this. How many politicians do everything they say they'll do? Let me answer that question for you. None of them. They're human beings. They make mistakes, they lie, they experience life circumstances that interfere with their abilities to do everything they say they'll do. They're human beings with personal lives. Keep an awareness of that. They're from the same source as you and me, which means they are no more powerful than you or me, I promise. They aren't getting out of here alive either. Keep that in mind. If you want relief from any anxiety this election has caused, I ask you to consider these things. First, don't get emotionally attached to politicians. Getting emotionally attached to a politician, as I did to Bill Clinton, is as foolish as believing a prostitute loves you. Politicians are charismatic, and they can make you think that they love you. That's rarely the case. They love what they do. And a big old hierarchy separates us from them, which makes it impossible to know who they really are. The person we see standing at that podium is the product of a polished, well-orchestrated persona. It's not real. It's part of the job. Have you ever gone to work when you're incredibly sad and put on a smile to cover up what was really going on with you? Well, of course you have. We all have. And our politicians are masters at this. Live with an awareness that what you see isn't necessarily what you get. Second, you have free will, which means you have control of your life circumstances. Use it wisely, and no elected official can dictate what you do. There's always a loophole. There's always another way. Nothing is black and white. Try and see the gray area and do your research. That leads to the third thing. Number 3, stop watching the news. Most of what you see and hear isn't true, and if it isn't a flat-out lie, it's so biased that it may as well be. Your news source could be filling you full of so much shit, and it's designed to make you worry. If you're worried, then you aren't peaceful, And if you aren't peaceful, then you aren't confident. Therefore, you're easier to control. People tend to worry about things that never happen. That is a huge source of anxiety, and it can be eliminated with mindful awareness and emotional intelligence. Worrying is the same thing as praying for what you don't want. Worrying is a perfect example of how all of us misuse our free will. Stay away from things that trigger worrying. The news is one of the biggest triggers ever. Most of it you don't even need to know about. When you watch the news, you talk about what you've seen and heard, and none of it is ever good. Think about that. When was the last time you watched the news and felt better afterward? You know what I'd like to do? I'd like to start a news station that reports only good news. Now, how do you think that would go over? Something to ponder on. Before I move on to the fourth thing, you must know how many bots are on social media. Because of bots, you can no longer believe what you see with your own two eyes. When you see something on social media, make sure to fact check it before you start spreading the news. These bots are believable as hell, so don't be naive. Do your research, especially if you see something that scares you, okay? 9 times out of 10, it's fake. The fourth thing is expectations. And I'm referring to the expectations you set for how others should vote. These expectations alone cause anxiety. Not everyone will vote for your values. Judge people based on how they treat you and nothing else. I've been treated quite poorly by people who share the same political values as me, so I never make judgments about anyone based solely on their political party affiliation. Be very careful when judging people based on their politics. What one person strongly believes in, the other person could care less. Want to know why? Because most of us are self-consumed. We're egocentric when it comes to politics. We're less likely to care if something doesn't directly affect us, so it's not fair or wise to hate someone for not believing in what you believe in. Here's a personal example. I am not going to care as much about transgender issues in healthcare as I do women's health, because women's health directly affects me, and it always has and always will. Do I care that the transgender population receives high-quality health care? Of course I do, because I think receiving high-quality health care should be a basic human right for everyone in America. That has always been one of my most important political values. Now, here's a hypothetical example. If there are 2 candidates, and one of them is fighting for the transgender population to have access to high-quality health care, and one of them is fighting for women like me to have access to high-quality health care, I'm going to vote for the candidate that's fighting for me, regardless if that candidate is blue or red. Why wouldn't I? I just want you to have an awareness beyond the black and white. There's always a gray area and a reason why people make the decisions they make. Take a look at what's going on with the Menendez brothers case. Now, their case isn't political, but it represents what I'm saying here. Most people don't murder their parents the way they did without a reason. They decided to murder their parents brutally, and they paid the price. They've been sitting in prison since 1990, I think. Recently, new evidence surfaced, and I think they may be getting out of prison. They murdered their parents after being sexually abused and tortured like their whole lives. Now, on the surface, the media showed 2 guys who murdered their parents and said their motive was money. Well, dig a little deeper and you'll find that things aren't always the way they seem. I'm just using them as an example because their situation demonstrates that gray area I'm talking about. And when you can see life from that gray area, you're more likely to practice empathy. Empathy is an indicator of strong emotional intelligence, and it will take you far. It will empower you. All right, back to politics. Both sides have designed and executed legislation that made certain things better or worse. In those instances, some people were on the better end of the deal and others were on the worse end of the deal. Perspective is reality, and what one person thinks is better, the other thinks is worse. That's life. That's why you must always protect yourself. Do what's right for you and don't place your life or trust in an elected official you've never met. Here's another thing I want you to seriously consider. None of us will ever agree with another person about everything. Deepak Chopra was my professor, and he's greatly enhanced my life, and I think he's brilliant, but I don't agree with everything he believes in. No matter how much you love and admire someone, you'll never agree on everything. Speaking of Deepak, he stopped debating people a long time ago because he realized he couldn't change people's minds. Debating was a waste of his time. Couldn't agree more with him. Debating comes from the ego, and the act of debating causes an undue burden on your entire physiology. Every time you do something that turns on your sympathetic nervous system, you create poor health. Debating does that. Your need to be right accomplishes nothing. It hurts you. Resist the need to be right, and you'll alleviate stress from your life. Each time you choose not to engage in some heated political debate, you create good health. Facts. I watched Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden, and I heard him say that he would stop taxing tips, overtime, and he would stop taxing Social Security benefits for seniors. He also said he would support a tax credit for people like me who care for a parent. 2 of those 4 policies would greatly benefit me, but money isn't what's driving my vote this round. So although those tax policies sound great, women's health is far more important to me than tax policies. You can't, in all fairness, hate me for that. I'm not a fan of every tax policy of Kamala Harris's, but I know women's health will be better represented under her administration. We must choose what's most important to us and cut the cord with any emotional attachment to any elected official. Which person will be most likely to support my values? Whatever candidate I choose, why hate me for it? I voted for Democrats and Republicans, and each vote was cast because I felt that candidate would most likely represent my voice. Just because I voted for them didn't mean I liked them. I don't get mad at my friends and family for the decisions they make because everyone must do what's right for them. I don't care who you vote for, but I do care if you attack me for my views because they're opposite yours. And I have zero tolerance for the double standard. And I've seen more of that nonsense during this election than ever. Here's another hypothetical scenario for you. Let's say you have the best investment banker ever, and this person has made you so much money. They've never made a mistake, and you're wealthier having hired this person. Then, let's say you find out that investment banker is gay, and you consider homosexuality to be an abomination of the Lord. Does that person's sexual preference change the quality of the work they've done for you? The answer is no. The factual answer is no. But people often make the mistake of paying more attention to the subjective. The subjective holds no real clout. Sticking with the homosexuality example here to demonstrate the double standard. If you think homosexuality is an abomination of God, okay, you don't have to practice it. But when you condemn another person for being gay and you want them to lose basic human rights, you're sinning too. This is the double standard, and it's a double standard that causes unnecessary pain, suffering, and anxiety. So, if you're stressed out because you think the Harris administration will be too liberal, keep what I just said in mind. You don't have to be a part of any of it. It's not our job to judge people or correct what we feel is immoral. When we get into the business of condemning, judging, punishing, and trying to force people to be what we want them to be, we are not acting like God. But having empathy for someone we can't relate to, that's God's work, ladies and gentlemen. Act like God. Live with mindful awareness. Look at the facts. Take control of your life. and know that nothing is more powerful than your free will. Use it to your advantage. If you do these 5 things, your anxiety will subside. Now, I'll close with this. Regardless of what happens in this election, we're all going to be okay one way or the other as long as we decide to be okay. If any of this information benefited you, please subscribe to the Thought Snob podcast. The more subscribers, the better the guest. I'm here to stay, so the more subscribers I have, the higher quality of the content you receive. And thank you so much for giving me your time. I know it's your most precious asset, and I put much work into not wasting it.
The Thought Snob podcast with Paula Swope has been brought to you by Thought Snob Media in association with Special Purpose Studios. All production, mixing, and sound engineering by me, Will Swope. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please take a few seconds to give us 5 stars and leave a review. See you on the next Thought Snob podcast with Paula Swope.